Jen Senko put together a movie called Brainwashing of My Dad. I think this is really interesting in a couple of different ways. Jen joins us now. Jen, welcome to Rebel Headquarters.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yes, and I like your name because we do a segment here called Jenko Unchained, because my name is Jenk. And yours is Jen Senko. It's like if you just put it together, Senko Unchained. Anyway, that's your next.
It's like a marriage made in heaven.
Okay, so I think the making of your movie is interesting, and the substance of your movie is interesting. So let's talk about the substance first. What happened to your poor dad? He used to be a Kennedy Democrat apparently, and then the right wing got a hold of him. So tell us that story.
Yeah, my dad was a non-political Kennedy Democrat. He and my mom watched a lot of, well, just regular news. And one day after a move, and he had a long commute to work, he started listening to talk radio, and it was Bob Grant at the time. And very slowly he started to change. And after he retired and then started listening to Rush Limbaugh full time, like 3 hours a day, every day, he really changed. He became really angry about things that he had never seemed to care about before. And he became sort of rebellious, actually, in a way, refusing to wear seatbelts and bringing his Manhattan drink in the car when he would come to pick me up. But basically, he just started getting these political views, which he was very, very stubborn about. I just remembered it was Walter Cronkite they used to watch every night. But this was something different, and it really changed his personality. He became very argumentative, and he had never been racist, and suddenly he became racist. He used to love my gay friends, and he no longer, he was bashing like gay people, and you were just wondering, my mom and my family, we were wondering, like, what happened to Dad? It was like the pod people. Like, there's my dad, but that's not him.
So Jen, I want to talk about the process of how that happens, because it didn't happen to my dad. I'll tell you a fun story about that in a second. But it did happen to a lot of my dad's friends. But you mentioned something there that's very powerful. I don't know if it's in the movie, but you said your dad became racist? That's pretty heavy. How so?
I don't know if you saw the movie, but in the movie, there's a part where I talk about going to New York as a child. I grew up in New Jersey, and we sometimes took trips to New York for the day. And we came out of Port Authority, and there was this African-American homeless man, and he asked my dad for some money. And my dad called him sir and gave him money. And we never heard any racist terms growing up. We were taught not to be racist and to be open to all people. And then my dad started saying these things like, like black people have to depend on welfare. All the stereotypes that you had heard, he was using. And this really particularly upset my mom. This was not how we were raised. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was very upsetting.
So Jen, is your dad still alive?
Unfortunately, my dad passed in 2016.
Okay.
But he got to see the movie.
Oh, he did? And what was his reaction?
Well, if I tell you, it might give away the ending of the movie, but he loved it. He was very proud of me.
Oh, wow. That's okay. I didn't expect that. That was a nice surprise ending. Okay. So very interesting to see how that dynamic plays out throughout the movie. So,
you have to see the movie for more than one reason. You're in the movie too.
Oh, I am. I didn't even know that. I hope I'm not brainwashing your dad. What happened?
Oh, no. You're really great. You were talking, you were doing a piece on the Young Turks about this supposed documentarian on Fox News saying that he was sure that ISIS was at the border, and that in fact he had seen flags and
I
prayer
remember
rugs.
that story.
Yeah, and you say, you know what it turned out to be? An Adidas sweater, an Adidas jersey.
Yeah, I remember.
So
that.
you're in the movie.
All right, that's awesome. Okay, now more reason to go. Now everybody should see the movie. Okay, no, seriously though, let's go back to the conversation about why it happens. So my dad had the opposite reaction as yours. So we were used to be Republicans, and they're liberal Republicans from New Jersey, but a lot of shady ideas, pro-war rallies, et cetera, that I did when I was in college. So some pretty embarrassing stuff. But my dad calls me one day when we're still Republicans and says, "Cenk, I've been watching Bill O'Reilly, and I think he is full of crap." And I was like, "Really?" And so he kind of figured out that O'Reilly was full of crap, and went in the opposite direction. But a lot of his friends and uncles that I love, man, they got brainwashed in exactly the way that you're talking about. And all of a sudden, I mean, the reason they were great friends with my dad is because they were warm, open-hearted people. When my dad came into this country, he's Muslim, they took him in and they were friends and never questioned it. Now all of a sudden talking about the scary immigrants, like, what do you mean your best friend is one of those guys, right? And so how do you think they do it, Jen? How does the brainwashing work? How is this so effective?
Well, I mean, this was a 30 to 40 year campaign with the intent purpose of pushing the country to the right. And it was done with misinformation, misinforming millions of Americans, getting them angry, using fear to divide. And then there's also a slew of tactics that they use, propaganda techniques, like using emotion and like using fear and like fake anger. And they get people kind of addicted to this, especially older people. Like if they're alone and they're home all day and they have nothing to do. I know so many people, friends of mine, that have parents that just all day they have Fox News on all day long. And it's seductive. And also, it's not just Fox News, though. It's people like Rush Limbaugh, who has 20 million listeners. Talk radio is extremely seductive. You're alone with that person. And it's almost as if you feel special, like you've developed a relationship with them. So they use the same manner that many cults often use to draw people in and to get them to believe like this is the only information that you are supposed to believe. All other information is wrong. It kind of reminds me of when I was a Catholic growing up in the Catholic Church saying you can only come to this church. Not that I'm comparing it to that. I hope I don't offend some people, but you know what I mean? That kind of like the allegiance just to us.
No. I'm agnostic, so I'm a little biased in that regard. But I totally agree with that analogy. So on the TYT network, we tell people to be open-minded and consider a lot of different possibilities and think about what if the shoe was on the other foot, et cetera. Even on issues where Trump is being attacked, we say, now what if it was Obama? And we try to get people to expand their view of things. But in the case of religion, that's not what it's about. It's about, no, God says this, you must do this, and it's ritual and it's tradition and it's repetition. And for conservative radio and TV, it's very similar. A voice from the mountaintop telling you what you must think and nonstop repetition.
And making you feel special for you recognize that this is the voice from the mountaintop. So you're part of that special group. It's like an in-group, out-group thing, which also the military uses. And it's called PSYOPs. And actually I've talked to people from the military that have contacted me about the movie. And the military is very hesitant to use PSYOPs because it can actually be very dangerous. You get the Sunnis and the Shiites against each other because you need to, but then later on, it's very hard to remarry it. And that's why I'm so passionate about this media phenomenon that's taken place over the last 30, 40 years. It's a huge problem. It's a threat to our democracy, and our democracy has been hurt by it.
Yeah, and the last 2 points on that is it creates an us versus them. So everyone who's them is the others, and they're a threat, and hence fear. And you should be angry about that and protect your own against the others. And also, like the army, they break down their individuality, and then you're one big us and you're one big mass. Whereas we celebrate individuality, so it's a huge difference culturally as well as intellectually. So, but we have time for one last thing, Jen. I wanted to ask how you got the movie made, because that's also an interesting story. How did you raise the funds for it?
Well, okay, I started getting fired from my jobs that I didn't really care about because I knew I wanted to make this movie, but I had saved $10,000 to make a trailer, and because I had made 2 previous documentaries, I knew people that knew people, and so I got hooked up with some really great people like Noam Chomsky, Jeff Cohen, Steve Rendell, Edward S. Herman, and I made my initial trailer. We put it on Kickstarter. And I was asking for $11,000, and what ended up happening is so many people came out of the woodwork and related to it that I ended up raising $45,000. But my real lucky break, as much money as that still wasn't enough money to make a movie. It's really expensive, obviously. One of the Kickstarter backers, Ryan Smith, emailed me one day and said, "What do you need? How much money do you need?" So it really was like an angel coming out of the heavens, and just we had just what we needed to make the movie. So it was an interesting experience. It was an interesting ride getting that money.
Yeah, and then Matthew Modine jumps in and narrates it. It's a really wonderful story of people banding together to make it possible. So we'll have the link down below in the description box on YouTube, in the comment section on Facebook, the brainwashing of mydad.com, and there it is, and all the awards and festivals that it was in. So Jen Senko, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me, Cenk. You'll have to watch it now.
Yes, absolutely.